This is the Todd Shapiro Show on Canada Talks, SiriusXM 167.
Our good friend, Katie Field. Hi, Katie Field from Halo Labs, halocanada.com. How are you?
I'm doing well, Todd. How are you?
You know, I'm peachy here in Canada. We got a big day. It's our election day to determine the next prime minister of this country.
Wow, that is a big day.
It's a big day. You know what we do differently, though, than what you do there in the States, because you live in Las Vegas, and Halo Labs, an American company, is although traded on the CSE. We don't vote for the leader. We vote for a representative in the riding of that party. It's kind of interesting.
Yes, that's right. Okay, good. I know. I was actually driving my son to school today, and I was talking to him about the Electoral College. So that's a very timely comment that you just made there about the differences in our comparative government. So,
and what was interesting is, and I don't know how this pertains to Halo Labs or really just cannabis in general, but obviously the big thing, not to get too deep into politics, but one of the big platforms that our current prime minister, and I think favored to be to win again anyway, from what we're hearing, and in a minority government though this time, the big platform he ran on last time was legalization of cannabis. That was everywhere and massive, and he did follow through on that campaign promise. There was very little talks about anything to do with sort of cannabis this time around, which I'm surprised by. I'm surprised he didn't brag about it a little more. Like, look, we got this done. And I guess why I'm trying to relate it to you, are there more and more talks from what you're hearing within the United States about a potential of more of a federally legal system there for cannabis?
there are talks about it. I've seen it both at the federal level. There have been some, legislation that's looking at addressing banking and sort of parsing that issue from the general industry. But then you'll also see experts talking about the need for federal intervention and federal regulation to have that across state standard for consumer protection. So we've started to move in that direction. I certainly think it would be a convincing platform for any of the candidates to run on.
Yeah.
I'm a little biased. But
no, listen, you're within the industry, but at the end of the day, we've proven a great rollout here in Canada, and some people are still angry that there is a black market that exists and strong black market that exists, and also that the Canadian government haven't done enough really to crack down on this. But I think at the end of the day, they're figuring this new emerging industry out, and I look to companies like Halo Labs and what's going on in America, and I go, you're right, Katie. If there was a company in the States, if there was a party in the States that just started to talk about this in a way through education, through working on hopefully promoting a legal market, so you get rid of the illegal market, you get rid of crime, you get rid of probably organized crime. I just think it would make sense, and I know, sort of talk politics with you. I know a lot of people get uncomfortable with it. I even think if a Trump went and said that, and it's something that wouldn't, most people wouldn't think Republicans would do, people would be like, second guessing themselves, going, wow, this is something that probably would be good for the country.
Yeah, I think everyone's ears would perk up a bit. I think that I do. And look, I think having uniform standards, just like we have in the food and drug industries, all of that, I actually think that it's good. It's good for consumers to have something that's predictable, that it doesn't vary from state to state, that there's just that quality control. So it's something that's positive. It's positive. It's not necessarily taking away anything. It's not restricting anyone's right. It's promoting a higher standard for the industry, and consumers win. And quite frankly, business owners in this industry win as well, to get that legitimacy. nationwide. So
without a doubt, and you said it best, if you're to compare it to sort of any kind of food or drug or that there's quality control that goes into this stuff, there's compliance that has to be met, and on a federal level that would just be so optimal and also so good for end consumers who know kind of at the end of the day that they're getting a very compliant product in their hands. Can you speak to some of that quality control that Halo Labs would already practice because of this?
Sure. So we do lots of testing throughout our processes, and that covers the gamut from, testing potency to make sure that it's dosable. The states where we operate have very strict labeling requirements. So in terms of active ingredients, what we put on the packaging is what needs to actually test. And there's not a lot of room for error. So we do lots of testing to ensure that, all the testing that's required by state law with, the third-party labs. And then we also do the quality studies. Those are to ensure that contaminants aren't in our products. So things like microbiologicals, molds, pesticides, things of that nature. And then, with our grow, for example, in Oregon, we do not use any of those additives, any of those additives in the growing process, any of those pesticides. So our flower always tests great. It's clean, and it's actually been we've had a tremendous yield this year. So anyway, we do all of those things. But the other thing that I will say that we do in addition is we are working on products that really ensure not just the consistency of it, but the dosability of it. So dab tabs are an example of that. That with each discrete tab that you're heating and then vaporizing, that will have a discrete amount of active ingredient in it. And so that really empowers consumers to know exactly what it is that they're getting and really control their consumption.
Katie Field is joining us from Halo Labs. Usually, when we speak, there's sort of company updates, and I always look forward to hearing about them. Any nice company updates that you may have for us?
Let's see. I mean, I will say that the harvest in Oregon, again, it's just been really, really tremendous. We have been selling the flower, and we've actually started launching pre-rolls. So it's the first year that we've done pre-rolls. We think of ourselves more as a concentrate company. But this year we're selling flower products as well. So that's exciting. We have some clear shatter, which is basically, we're known to do shatter, but this is completely clear. I mean, you can literally see through it. And we'll be launching that. So that's hitting the market in Oregon. Our live resin cards have gone out of stock already. And so a lot of these new products that we're doing have really, that's really been a tremendous source of success for us. And, things are just continuing to progress with Lesotho. That's always exciting. And just kind of continuing to execute in California and move as quickly and effectively as possible. So
Lesotho, of course, being in Africa. Where's Halo Labs as a company at with that now?
We're just working through the transaction at the moment. We're working through those last components of the agreement, the purchase agreement, and so hopefully that'll be something that we'll be able to really just hit the ground running with soon. That's certainly what our expectation is. So.
Obviously, one of the things we've seen in the news over the last 3 to 4 weeks was, this kind of this sort of negative talk on vaping, and I know, of course, you have your dab tabs, and it's a sort of self-regulated technology there that is different, and you've talked about how that's different, and people can figure out and find out how that's different on your website than most of these illegal kind of made in China cheap e-pens and stuff. And one of the things I saw, I think I saw it earlier today actually in my notes, was that e-cigarettes helped more than 50,000 people in England quit smoking in a one-year study. And it was actually saying 50 to 70,000 smokers in England quit in 2017. But now, because of these sort of new policies and now this kind of feeling around e-cigarettes, meaning that these results might not be replicated elsewhere. And I thought to it, without making health claims or anything, but when you see these types of studies about harm reduction and stuff, do you ever think of it, Katie, as it a shame sometimes that people aren't also focusing on the very good results of the stuff as opposed to just maybe the negative?
I think that we've been jumping to conclusions about what the causation is, or what is really underlying the sicknesses that are coming around. And I think that there are a couple theories, some that are shared across both e-cig and cannabis vapes, and some that may be more tailored to one of those kind of segments of the vaping technology cartridge industries. I think that we're maybe not taking a thought. I think we're going to take a thoughtful approach. I think that the government is encouraging research. I think, certainly the federal government has, and, Oregon wants to do the same. That's where we've had to really react to the new laws in Oregon. But they want to take time. Hopefully they'll do some research and they'll figure out what's driving it, so we can, focus on what may be beneficial. I agree, there are benefits. So let's not, throw the baby out with the bathwater. But, until then, in Oregon, for example, we've tried to make lemonade out of lemons, and we've launched our cannabis-derived distillate line already, which those are the terpenes that are derived from actual cannabis extraction processes. So we've already started to do that, and those are perfectly allowed in Oregon. So we've already started to backfill that demand to not, see a fall off in our sales, and to offer our dispensary customers those compliant products with the new regulations. So it's forced us some sort of innovation we were already doing, but to execute it more quickly. And in the meanwhile, hopefully we'll get researchers and governments will come together and we'll figure out what's driving the health scare.
Katie Field from Halo Labs and HaloCanada.com. One question I've sort of never asked your entire team there. How does sort of the hiring process go in terms of, your growers and extractors and really there's so much I would imagine there's so much knowledge from some people. And do you find the best out there?
We find the best. We do. We absolutely do. It's hiring in general is it's something that you have to take time with. You want to scrutinize and filter candidates, and many of the states that we operate in, I think all of them really require strict background checks. So everyone has to be thoroughly scrutinized, both for company policies and state policies, really state requirements. But we do get very knowledgeable employees, and then they stay with us. And they've actually been staying with us since Oregon, and they've helped to open additional facilities. And they're invaluable. They're invaluable team members.
What kind of regulations would be in the facilities? Like if I wanted to visit one, what would I have to put on certain scrubs and stuff to get in there?
Yes, you would. You'd have to make sure. I mean, again, it kind of varies state by state. But in Nevada, for example, there is that sort of clean, I won't call it clean room protocol, but we are more you have to be proactive about preventing any contamination and the proper airflow and things of that nature. And those are all, those are great standards to have because they ensure product safety. So that's part of the protocol. But there's also the protocol, just of you're entering the facility and you're coming in and you're getting screened and your ID is getting checked and you're getting signed in. You get a visitor badge. There's all of that as well. And everyone needs to be signed in and out.
Yeah, there's so much security that goes on within companies, and of course we've learned that from another client of ours called 360 Secure Corp, who does a lot of the protection and stuff for cannabis transports and stuff. That's also something that amazes me in this industry. When you transport cannabis, is that something Halo Labs does as well?
We have the ability to do so in Oregon and in California. In California, we just got we fully perfected one of our distribution licenses. We're using that more just to transport between facilities versus direct to dispensaries. We do our fulfillment with Nabis. But in Nevada, we do not do our own transport. So again, it's one of those things where the operating model just varies state by state. It varies, some states require you to do all of it. Some states you need to apply for each license individually. So when we need to transport cannabis in Nevada, we use a licensed third-party transporter.
I love this stuff. I mean, for me, I always like painting the picture of the big business that it is, and compliance being a huge one of them. And people, especially they're in America, state to state, and it can be confusing at times. But people forget. People they see products and they kind of forget all the hard work that goes into it, and that's why I love to kind of create the theater of the mind for the listener, to show how diligent your team is, how hardworking you all are, and of course everything you're putting out there in terms of news releases, company updates, and products. Katie Field, we always appreciate your time from Halo Labs. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Todd, for having me anytime.
Will do. Halo Labs and HaloCanada.com.
This is the Todd Shapiro Show on Canada Talks, SiriusXM 167.